as Florida State looks fresh.
Forrest Fresh, as he goes to the bucket, and that's a door slamming right there. That is a door slamming.
All right, everybody, welcome to the first edition of the Nole Hoops Authority podcast. I am Perry Doobie, and I'm accompanied by Anthony Scadillo. It's the first time I've ever said his name correctly in my life. Also, I don't want anyone to be fooled by the title of this podcast. When we say authority, we are quite literally the opposite of that. We are two guys who know each other from college and occasionally like to message Tanner Nam on Instagram and have him not respond to us. So anything that you hear today is purely an amateur opinion. And we're looking forward to giving those to you. So, Anthony, you got anything to say that you want to intro yourself?
No, excited to be here and to stoop to the lowest levels I ever had in my life and messaging Division I basketball players to try to get information from them. But, looking forward to talking some hoops, something that, in my Florida State fandom, we haven't done a ton of, and now deservedly so we should.
Yeah, we've got another sport that shall not be named that's pretty tough to watch right now. And so I feel like now is the time to start an FSU college hoops money-making empire, and that's what myself and Anthony are doing. It's clear that we're going to have thousands of listeners to this podcast in short order. And by that, I mean 3 of our friends, maybe. So let's get this started. Today, we're going to go over the schedule. I'm going to pull that up on the screen here. And we're just going to do a quick overview of, what we think about the schedule, how we see the results going from here on out. We'll get to one other topic, but we're going to try to keep this short and efficient. So let's start. Anthony, what's your overall impression of the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit different of a schedule, obviously a little bit different of a year overall, but we don't have to do and face some of the teams that have given us trouble in the past. And I think we've been given some gifts. We only have to play Duke once. We only have to play Virginia once. We only played Louisville once. And I think that's massive. Over the last few years, we've played out of state, out of conference. We've had to play Tennessee. We've had to play Purdue. None of those guys on the schedule this year. And I like the out-of-conference teams that we do have to play. I think getting UF at home, albeit no fans, is big for us. I think we always play them really tough year in and year out. Clearly, we've shown that. But getting them at home on our turf is going to be a little bit different. I was hoping to get Pitt at home to avoid the whistle fest that has been the last few years. But we'll try to go in there and break a streak and try to make some noise. It's really unfortunate because as a unit, we've really started to put it together and be consistent from game one through the end of the season. And I wish there was going to be a significant fan base there because I think Florida State kind of needs something to get behind right now with how poor some of the other programs are doing, or one of the other programs is doing over there. And I think we saw last year, as the fans were starting to really get behind the team, is that the Tucker Center is loud and it's exciting. And I wish fans were going to be there, but I still think that we keep that home advantage, even though they're not going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, we will have some fans in the building. So they're saying it's going to be about 25% capacity. So in that arena, we're looking at probably right around 2,000, if not a little bit under. But one thing that I think on that note is if you look at this schedule and just geographically who we're playing, we're going to be one of the few teams on this schedule, if not in the country, that are going to have any fans present in their building. I saw, Tennessee said they're trying to have 4,000 fans. I'd be shocked if Georgia Tech didn't have a few fans in there. Miami will probably have fans as well. But when you look at the Boston colleges, the UNCs, the Dukes, the Notre Dames of the world. I mean, Notre Dame's had football fans and they've taken a lot of heat for that. I can't imagine them putting basketball fans in a closed arena, but we live in the state of Ron DeSantis down here, and it's pretty clear we're going to have fans all season. And, regardless of the pandemic, and obviously it's a tragedy and all these things going on, that's going to be a massive advantage, even if it is only 2,000 fans. I think that could serve to really shock some of these teams coming in who have been used to playing in empty buildings all season. So I think that's a big advantage. I also think you look, we reel off 6 straight at home to start the season in non-conference, haven't lost a non-conference game at home since I believe 2014. And that's a great way to start. And then beyond that, I feel like every season we look at the ACC schedule and we say something to the effect of, I wish that we could be Duke, or I wish that we could be North Carolina, and the powers that be would give us the fortunate schedule. And this season, we are that team. I don't think anybody's got an easier road than Florida State does. You've got really nothing on this schedule that I can complain about. It sets up extremely well from an ACC perspective. And I'm very much looking forward to how it plays out. And when you look at how young this team is, and that we have a 6'9" point forward leading us, they're going to need some time to really step up. And we've got some tough games in that early schedule, but having them at home is absolutely huge from a non-conference perspective.
No, I think it does play a big part. I mean, this year's a little bit different. We are starting some freshmen and kind of going to be relying on them. That's not something we have done maybe since like the XRM days. When he came in and started lighting it up, Dwayne Bacon and Beasley. But we weren't necessarily relying on them. I think this year we could see a little more reliance on a guy like Scotty Barnes because he's the talent that he is. And to get some of these non-conference games, like Indiana, we had to play on the road previously, and that didn't end up the way that we wanted it to. So to bring them back, I think that's a little bit of a revenge game. And I think that's, looking early at the schedule, I think that could be a statement win.
Yeah, and I definitely think it could. I mean, we'll get to the stretches in a second here, but that Indiana, Florida in the same week, I think is going to set a lot of the tone for where we're going. I think the past few seasons when we've had these great seasons, it's been a surprising start or a surprising stretch. Last year, we didn't think there was any way we could start as well as we did, given that we were front loaded the way we were. And we started extremely strong, obviously losing a Pitt in Indiana. But other than that, basically played flawless. And that set the tone for the season. The year before, when we, was it 2 years before with Isaac? That's what it was, when we had that stretch of the 6 straight ranked ACC opponents and we won 5 of them. Those types of stretches, I think, is what this team really needs. And if we can get a guy, like you said, like Scotty Barnes out the gate and really, surprise Florida again, although nothing's a surprise when you beat a team 6 times in a row and their coach is Mike White. But if you can do that again and really whoop up on some of these teams and get revenge on Indiana, like you said, I think that sets the tone for the whole season. And then we get into that really fortunate ACC schedule and go from there. But I want to get your opinion. What do you think the toughest stretch of this schedule, let's say 3-4 games, is? Where do you think the biggest challenge is going to lie?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we don't necessarily have a grouping of games that I look at and I'm like, oh man, this is the gauntlet. And some of that has to kind of do with how impressive Florida State has been. In years past, I would be more scared of more of these teams because we didn't have the talent there, or we weren't playing as an offensive unit. Our defense has always been there, but now we're starting to really get out in transition. And I think teams kind of look at us and say, oh man, this is the team I don't want to face. And look, I have to go back to back with them. And face them. And that's, you can't take us lightly anymore as you could previously. But I think if you look from January 16th to January 23rd, you get UNC at home. That's a team that's built on their size. They could run 5 centers out this year. They're not going to run us out the gym with offense, but they can throw it down low. And it's going to be a tough matchup. Then you get at Louisville. Will be determined on the health of their team. If they're back as a unit, it's obviously a tougher game. And then home against Clemson. I think Clemson is going to make a little bit of noise this year. Bring a lot of guys back, talented team, well coached, went on a little bit of run last year. And I think we're going to see them improve. I think they're not too far behind us honestly, in the ACC. I could see them being, a top 6 team this year in the ACC.
Yeah, I could see that. They do return a lot of guys. I think I was at that Clemson game at Clemson last year when they hit that game-winning shot at the end. They're an athletic team. They do lose one of their engines, one of their senior scorers, but they bring back Sims. They bring in a couple good recruits. I think they are going to be challenging. I think that's definitely. We're in a similar area here. You mentioned Louisville. I think that's a team that, if healthy, would pose a lot more of a threat than what we're going to see. You're not going to have. They may get their transfer Mineland from San Francisco back by that point, but they're going to be missing another huge piece on that team who's out 10 weeks, and so I think it's going to be. It's going to be a fortunate time to get Louisville. I'm tempted to say, because we have to go to Pittsburgh, that January 9th through 18th stretch, where in a span of basically 10 days, you got to play at Pittsburgh, and then you get NC State and Carolina at home, and then go to Louisville. I'm tempted to say that's the toughest stretch, but I'm going to go way off the book here and go back to the beginning of the season. And despite playing at home, I think that December 9th through December 15th is going to be the toughest stretch of this season. I think you've got a definitely a tough matchup, especially as early on as we're going to play them in Indiana against Trace Jackson Davis. I think that the Gators are one of the most talented teams in the country. I think they're helped by their losses more than they're hurt by them. And then, similar to how you think Clemson can make some noise, and I know we vastly disagree on this, but I think Georgia Tech is going to be a really tough team in the ACC this year. It's not to say I believe that they're going to contend in the top 4, but I do think they're going to have a shot at making the tournament, and I could see them being the 5th best team in the ACC. And so, despite playing all 3 of those games at home, I personally would be shocked and incredibly pleased to go 3-0 in those games and thereby start the season out 5-0. I think that's going to be a really tough stretch. But you never know what can happen in the TLC double C. I mean, it's a different atmosphere. We don't lose there often. I thought it was a pretty funny tweet. I believe it was Michael Rogner put it out there where, people were saying what a huge disadvantage it would be for Duke to not have fans in the stadium. And he said something to the effect of, yes, such a huge disadvantage to a team that's lost twice as many games at home over the last 4 seasons as Florida State. So, other than Gonzaga, there's no place tougher to play statistically than the TLC double C. And if we're one of the only arenas in the country with fans, I think that gets ratcheted up even a little bit further. So,
I think it will too. And obviously playing at home is a huge advantage. I mean, personally, I don't have us starting 5-0. I think there will be a loss in there. I think where you and I differ is where that loss will probably be, unless you have them in multiple losses in that category. And then that's where we differ again. But, Georgia Tech could be a good team, riding the high of last year, bringing in 7'1" freshman center, big body, good passer. Will he be able to lead that team? I don't know. Will we be able to defend that size? I think so. We're bringing in a 7'1" center too. He's not a freshman in high school. He's an NBA, potential draft pick. And I think, and it's funny what you said off air to me this week. And you said, look at what we did with Dom last year. And that's a 7'1" kid that didn't play really get up to that point.
Yeah.
And
Ole Miss would have paid him
to leave. Exactly. So they wanted him to leave. They said, good riddance. We took him on, and he was, I'm not going to sit here. He's not an all-ACC player. He's not an NBA player. He's not a professional player I don't see him playing professionally anywhere. But look at what we can do with someone that's not talented. And now we're going to bring in a 7'1" kid in Tanner Nagam that can shoot, that can run, that can defend. I think you put him in our system. He doesn't need to be the 1. He could be the 2. And if he's not ready for the 2, guess what? We're bringing in another 7-foot center that's going to fill in and has already looked like since he's been on campus, put on weight. And that was his biggest thing. He's a young kid. He's skinny, doesn't look so skinny anymore. You've seen the pictures of Quincy Ballard, looks like a scary dude. And then you have Balsa there as well. So I look up and down the ACC and I see all these teams that are now heavy at center. And I look back at our roster and I'm like, I'm not that concerned because we have the bodies.
And the funniest thing about that is none of those three guys are probably even going to start. So you're bringing all of them off the bench. And to your point about Tanner, I think that there's probably no two people higher on him than we are. Nobody's talking about this kid. This kid's a legit NBA prospect, legit first round talent. Who knows if that will materialize? But like you just said, if we can make Dom score 5 points per game in the ACC and actually make a difference, I tend to think a guy who is arguably better defensively, is more powerful around the rim, and can shoot threes and space the floor while also dribbling might be a little bit more effective. But
maybe.
With Ham, Quincy Ballard could come in and be the best big we've got. We have no idea because this is kind of what Ham does. And, we were obsessing over Moussa Cisse for 6 months, only to have Ham pull the rug out from under us and say, here's this random Canadian guy that I found, making maple syrup up here. And he's somehow ranked as a top 30 draft prospect on a lot of the NBA draft sites. We're going to bring him in. And nobody even knows about him. Nobody talks about him. So we'll get to the positional reviews later. But I think that you're right. We're never going to be an issue with size, but I do want to run through these games individually. We're just going to really quick do W's and L's for each of us and keep track of that and see who was the most correct as we get towards the end of the season here. If I can figure out how to open a spreadsheet instead of minimizing it. But why don't you start off with Gardner Webb? I have a feeling I'm going to be shocked by your pick on this one.
Yeah, that's going to be a W. That's a tough one.
One thing I will say for Gardner Webb is that they do have a chance to be a tournament team. And so this is something that I think we'll see out of Gardner Webb and UNF. They have a chance to be the best teams in their small conferences. So obviously I'm just going to, rather than discuss this, put down W's for both of those for us, but could help the, what is it? The net ranking. I'm going to call it.
We're going to get an extra quad 4 win there. So that's
it could be quad 3 by then. All right, let's go Indiana. I feel like this is where we may start to diverge, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So this is my revenge game. Watching Indiana kind of wipe the floor with us was something that I think the guys that were on this team are going to take personally. And the guys that we're bringing in, right? I look at Barnes and I think he's going to feed off the intensity. He's an intense kid as is, but he's going to feed off the intensity of guys like MJ Walker, guys like Malik Osborne that play and will run through a wall for you. And I think he's going to bring that in this game. I have a nice little write-up here. We're going to win by double digits.
All right. I think we win the game as well. I don't see us winning by double digits because I think this early on, they've got a very systematic approach. And when they're running things through Trace Jackson Davis, they're hard to stop. And I think early on in the season, while we're still getting our rotations down with Barnes in the lineup, putting Cahoon in there and seeing how these guys play together, I think it may pose some difficulties, but I also don't think that Danny Green's little brother is going to be drilling shots from half court for 24 minutes of the game. So I'm going to give us a W at the TLC double C. But I do think that this is arguably one of the 5 or 6 hardest opponents we're going to play all year. I think that Indiana is absolutely a tournament team, and I think that they could actually make some noise in the Big Ten.
No, and that's not to discount them, right? They're bringing in 5-star talent too. Like they're bringing in a 5-star point guard in Christian Landers. So we can't I'm not going to down talk who they are. I am just going to, I feel so confident. Like if you're bringing in a 5-star point guard, guess what? Like we are too.
Yeah.
You want to call him a guard, you want to call him a forward, whatever you want to call him. Like I take our guy over yours.
Yeah, and we've got depth all day. We've got depth, and so that I think that's a theme in this schedule for a while here. But what do you think? How does depth or our talent play versus, other than Duke, maybe the other most talented team that we have on the schedule in UF?
Yeah, so this is where I give Florida State our first L, and we haven't lost to Florida in a hot minute. But bringing in Keontae Johnson, star of the team, 6'5", best player, all SEC as a sophomore, and I think he's only going to get better. Shot 38% from three last year, seven rebounds plus. I think he's just going to continue to grow his game. Scotty Lewis entering his sophomore year, I think he takes a major leap. Was a little bit of a disappointment his freshman year, but I think he's only going to get better as well. You're bringing in 3 transfers and a JUCO signee. This is a deep team. This is talented. I think this is where I think it'll be close, and I do think we can win. But coming off of Indiana, I think we're going to come off like a little bit of a high there. First win for some of the guys on the team, big win, and I think this is where we kind of let down.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything you said just now is true, and I am a complete and utter traitor in that I am actually getting a graduate degree at the University of Florida right now. So I see this team play probably a lot more than most Florida State fans do. I think that this team is actually getting better, like I said earlier, by losing Andrew Nembhard, who just took the air out of the ball and was completely inefficient, and Kerry Blackshear, completely misused, a guy who absolutely owned us at Virginia Tech. We had no answer for him. He was unstoppable. I watched that guy disappear. They made him into a shooting forward and kept him outside the arc. Speaks to Mike White's prowess as one of the most underachieving coaches. I think they're far better with Trey Mann at their point. I think that Scotty Lewis is going to take a step forward. And I think that they've got the horses to beat pretty much anybody in the country. And with that said, Mike White is still their coach. And I still think these guys are going to be like deer in the headlights when they come up to Tallahassee. I think that, we've gotten in their head. And like you said, I don't think that Malik Osborne and Scotty Barnes screaming in their ears for 40 minutes is going to make them any less scared. I'll give us the W, despite the fact that I think this is talent-wise, this is an incredibly evenly matched game.
I think this is a game that could be determined early. Like if we come out and throw the first punch and it's a big punch, this game's over.
Which is what we've done, other than the Dwayne Bacon winning shot year. And the time that the Gators scored on themselves in Tallahassee. Of these past 6 wins, we have destroyed them straight from the gate, right initially. And so that's the hope, is that we do that again this year. Georgia Tech, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is where we're going to have our biggest difference, is that I just don't think they're that good. They've been a tournament team twice in I've read like the last decade. This isn't a good team. This is a team that's returning players that did well at the end of the year against bad teams. This is a team that's returning players in the ACC that was a down year for the ACC, and then we're going to crown them a better team when other team. We're not going to see UNC be as bad as last year. Duke is improving. UVA is improving. We're getting better. The only team that's I think is going to take like a kind of a big step back is Louisville due to injuries. So like I don't buy the Georgia Tech hype, really. I don't buy the Georgia Tech hype, and I have us winning here.
So I definitely disagree on this. I don't think that the way they finished was a fluke. I think that, first of all, I think that this is a do or die season for Pastner, even though Georgia Tech has no money and no real way to get out of his contract. I think if he does not win games and finish in a strong way, he's gone some way or another. So I think these guys are going to play for him. They've got the typical guard types that give FSU trouble. The Alvarados of the world, these small shooting guards who just throw up shots and hit them out of nowhere. That's exactly what this team is made up of. They're certainly going to struggle on size, and I don't think that they're going to be able to post up with us. But I just think this is one of those weird times that we see us lose a game we shouldn't early in the season. We do it every year. We did it to
You're good for one. You're good for one.
Down in Sunrise, did it to Oklahoma State a couple years back, and Pitt last year. Those haven't happened at the TLC Double C recently, but every streak has to end, and I think it happens here. So I'm going to take us with an L to Georgia Tech. Please tell me you're not picking an L to UCF.
No, it's a quick W. We could keep
okay. I agree. I think they are arguably the worst team on our schedule. There's nothing redeeming on that roster, and there's no reason to even discuss anything about them. And they were not rightful national championships in any sport at any time at that university. I don't care what anybody says, and we're not going to talk about it any further. All right, at Clemson. I know you were high on them earlier. Do you think that FSU comes out with a win?
This is our second L, for me at least. I think this is two tough games for us. I think this is a team that kind of runs with us a little bit. We saw it last year. Like you said, this is a team that's athletic, and I think we're a team that's athletic. So who's going to score more points and who's going to get the defensive stop? I'm going to give them this one because they're at home.
Okay. Logically, I was up there. They've got a great facility, really good arena, and they're definitely one that I could see having fans like we will. And I think that's a tough place to play. To me, this is another revenge game. These guys are going to be pissed that they lost that game last year, especially because there were some controversial calls down the stretch in that one. I see us coming out and winning this game and really having a strong showing. So I'll give us a W there. All right. Biggest game of the season, arguably, Duke comes to town. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I give us a W here. Because I think coming off a loss at Clemson, you come home a little irritated. You know that you have to face a good team, and maybe you're almost looking at Duke playing Clemson, right? Maybe it's a look-ahead game. You're right. I do think they'll be a little irritated after last year, as they should be, losing in the final seconds, questionable calls down at the end. It was ticky-tacky fouls. But I have us returning home and beating Duke. It's a good team. They're always good teams. They're always well-coached teams. This is another team that's kind of relying on freshmen year in and year out, and I think this is kind of where our experience is going to flex a little bit. We're getting into the thick of things in the ACC schedule. We have guys that have gone through the gauntlet now, and you have Gray, you have Walker, you have Osborne now, you had Evans, who is getting healthy this time of year last year. Like, this is a team that I think is going to be prepared to go, and I think Scotty will have seen enough tests to this point to step up and be the guy that we need him to be.
Yeah, so I really don't understand a lot of the Duke hype this year, personally. I don't think that people realize what a big piece Trey Jones was for them and how much of a difference he made, and losing him is going to be absolutely huge for them. I think they've got more talent than they did last year. They've got an incredible amount coming in, but to tell me that Matthew Hurt is going to take this huge step and somehow become this all ACC player, I just don't see it. And so to me, I'm not a huge Duke guy this year. I think that Florida State eventually finishes far superior, but I am taking an L here for pretty much the exact opposite logic of what you just expressed. I think that they go in, put everything out on the court at Clemson. This is where we see a little bit of the inexperience of the roster as a whole, and not having Trent Forrest there to keep everyone's head screwed on straight. We do have MJ, who I love, but MJ's not going to be taking the ball in his hands down the court every time down. And so I think this is where we face a team with similar athleticism. And I think it's going to be a tough game to win at this stage in the season, but just at this stage. So
yeah,
I'll give us
I think we split these games. I don't see us winning both, and I don't see us losing both.
I think we agree there.
Which one is it? I don't know.
Going either way.
Yeah. But again, I don't buy the hype. I don't buy the hype. We're not talking about Zion coming back and playing for them this year. Yes, they're bringing in talent, but you're right. And Trey Jones was the engine that made that car run, and losing him is massive.
Yeah, and who are they running down low? Like, Vernon Carey was the reason we had to guard that guy in a certain way to where it made our defense not rotate as well as it could. I think they bring back some interesting pieces. Some guys that won them games late and stuff like that. But overall, I just don't think that young talent's going to be enough to carry them. And Coach K historically, other than 1 or 2 seasons, has not been Coach Cal. He's just not the young talent guy. He needs a veteran.
No, he needs developmental talent.
I don't think he has it. All right, Syracuse. Syracuse.
This is my Quincy Ballard revenge game.
We're going 13th guy on the roster.
Yeah, that's how I'm calling this game. Obviously the 2-3 can give people fits, and they have 3 legitimate shooters on the team. But I don't think they'll hang with us. I think we have some legitimate shooters on the team too.
Yeah, when Buddy Boeheim is your best player, I just can't see you beating a team with the athleticism of Florida State. The only reason they stuck with us last year was because Elijah Hughes is a legitimate NBA prospect who was out of his mind when they played us, and we still beat them miraculously, but beat them nonetheless. They don't have that player this year. They don't have the athleticism. They don't have the talent. I give this an easy W. Let's go to Pitt. What do you think? Do we overcome the demons?
I mean, I have us as a win here. The only way we lose this game, this is one of the worst teams that we will play against. Horrendous team.
Absolutely.
The only way we lose this game is a whistle fest. The only way we lose this game. So I'm just going to pretend like it's not even out there.
If until we beat Pitt at Pitt, we will not beat Pitt at Pitt. I'm giving it an L.
Are you really?
I am. It's a horrible team, but it has been every single time we've lost to them at Pitt. Those games truly give me nightmares. I remember it was maybe 4 years ago now. We went up there. They had not won an ACC game. They blew us out of the gym, and I drank every type of liquor at the bar afterwards because I was so depressed. And until we find a way to break out of those shackles and destroy those demons, I give it an L every time. L at Pitt.
I'm riding Scotty to the promised land, man. I think he's the one. If he's not yelling at the other team or his teammates, I think he's just going to scare the shit out of the refs.
Yeah, he's a scary dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Him and Malik. They're going to have to, ESPN or whoever's carrying that game or all of our games is going to have to really put this on, maybe instead of like a 4-second delay, maybe a 6, because Malik's going to be screaming all kinds of obscenities. Scotty's going to get pumped up. They might just scream at each other. Who knows what the fuck's going to happen? But you're going to need some sort of censor, just a guy dedicated to doing nothing but that.
Yeah.
All right, NC State at home.
That's a win. It's an improving team, another team that's like middle of the pack ACC, but we're at the point where we shouldn't lose to middle of the pack ACC teams.
Yeah, I think this is actually I think this is where we see Florida State kind of go into a bit of a hole and go through a dark stretch where we're not playing as well as we should. That being said, NC State, they bring back Funderburg, but that's not enough. I think they lost their best player. They've got a 6-foot-tall shooting guard who can do nothing else in the game other than shoot. In Tallahassee, I don't think they could beat us. Maybe if it was up in Raleigh, I'd give them a shot if we were going through a bad stretch, but it would take a combination of both of those things, in my opinion. And I've already given us our really, really bad loss at home, even though I think they could finish 5th in the ACC to Georgia Tech. So I'm not going to take it here. All right, UNC at home. This is another one where I feel like where the people are projecting this team is very favorable given how they played last year.
Yeah, so I'm actually giving us an L here.
Okay.
And I think that's because this is the first game that I see that has the big bodies to go with us and will utilize those big bodies. You have 5 legitimate centers on that team, bunch of 5-star freshmen. I think Williams is a little bit better of a coach with these young guys, as we see like these young guys go to the league more developed or showing a little bit more than some of the Coach K guys. Obviously, not the upper echelon guys. Zion's going to come in and dominate, and there's no taking away from that. But I think they're due for a really big bounce back year. UNC doesn't stay down for long, and I think this will be a little bit of a gut punch to Florida State and a wake up call for the rest of the season.
Yeah, we agree on the result here. I do think Florida State's a better team than UNC in the end, but this is, to your point, this is like that roster is almost like the perfect Coach K team. This is a team that has veteran talent that is dominant. You got Garrison Brooks, you got a couple guys on that roster who could easily win ACC Player of the Year.
Yes.
They've got really good young talent. I won't put it quite at the level of Duke's, but it's really good. I don't think Roy Williams is all there as a coach anymore. I don't think he's going to be able to maximize what he has on that roster. So I don't see this as a Elite Eight team or anything of that sort, but I think they could be a Sweet 16 team. And I do think they're a top 4 finisher in the ACC. But I don't think that this loss is indicative of what the eventual results will be. I've said that up to this point in the season, and you'll probably see that kind of be reflected in my picks from here on out. But I just think that the way we start as a team in Florida State is not going to be the way it finishes, because this is a younger team led by a freshman at the point. And I just think it's impossible to start the way that we have in these previous years without that veteran leadership taking the ball up the court. I hope to be wrong, but I think by the end of the season, there's great potential. So with that, let's move to Louisville. We got to go up there. Obviously, that was another game I was at last year, an incredible performance, dominant. What do you think?
I mean, that was one of the best games I've ever watched. Two, I think, of my favorite Florida State dunks I've ever seen, with P-Dubs and Trent giving us the one at the end. I have this as a win. Chris Mack's going to start calling us daddy pretty soon, because we're dominating him pretty much in every facet of ACC basketball. We're dominating him in recruiting, and now we're dominating him on the court. And I think that this is another win for Florida State. And I think they're going to ride the high off of last year and say, like, yeah, this is a team that we're going to start dominating from here on out.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, obviously that second Louisville game at home is probably the best. That's probably the best regular season Florida State game in the history of the program. I won't speak to the 70s, but other than that era when we made the Final Four once, I can't imagine a game being more impactful than that and what it could have meant to the eventual results of the season. But let's not forget also the game I was referring to that I was at was up at Louisville, and how well we played when we ran them out of their own building. And like I said, I was there. There were packed stands, sold out event, nicest arena I've ever been to in college, by the way. But they just had no answer. And I don't think they're going to have an answer up there this year, especially with their injuries. We agree on this. That's a W, and I think it serves as almost a turning point of the season. You gave us an L to Clemson at Clemson. Do you think that they can beat us in Tallahassee?
No, I don't. And I think you're right. I think the Louisville game, I think the UNC Louisville game is going to be when we start to catch fire. I only have us, and we'll get to that. I don't really have us getting challenged from here on out. Going to be a revenge game from earlier in the year, at least in my books. Take the L that we had from them, learn from it, go and get the dub against Clemson at home.
Yeah, I've got us winning both Clemson games. I don't see them competing in Tallahassee. And like I said, I think this is when we start to get hot. Miami at home. This is a team that a lot of people are picking to finish 5th or 6th in the ACC. We differ in opinions on this team considerably for one primary reason. But what's your thoughts on this game?
I mean, as I kind of went along reviewing this schedule, this is a team that I think could give us a little bit of a challenge, because like you said, the little point guards are the ones that give us the fits, but I just don't think they're very good. I don't buy the big hype that they're getting this year. This is not football. This is basketball. And I think that they're not even close to where we are as a program. And I don't think they're close to where we are as a team. And this is a win for us.
Yeah. No one is lower on Chris Likes than me, other than his own height. I think that Chris Likes makes this team way worse. He throws up an inordinate amount of bad shots, and somehow a lot of them go in. But defensively, he's a complete liability at 5'6" or 7" or whatever he is. They've got guys on that roster like Wong that I think would be way better suited to run the team. But Larinaga is going to keep running through likes. The ACC media names him to the first team because they clearly don't understand basketball. This is a team that I think they're hurt by Chris Likes. They also lost a massive piece in Vasilovich, or however the hell you say his name. I'm never going to attempt to again. But that kid spread the floor, was great on defense and offense. And without him, I don't think they're going to be quite as good, but they are a talented roster. That being said, I don't think they can win in Tallahassee. Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech. What do you think? I don't think I have to guess. You've given your analysis on the team. Is this a W?
This is a dub.
Okay. I'm going to go W as well. We're not losing to Georgia Tech twice in one season,
No.
Although I do think that they are a decent team. At BC, if you pick this as a loss, I'm turning the camera off.
Nope. I'm just very happy we get to play them twice. This is
as am I.
Yeah.
As would UNF or Gardner Webb be, because BC is really, really looks to be set up to struggle considerably this year. Definitely a W. This is the worst team in the ACC, in my opinion, by a wide margin. At VT, maybe the second worst team in the ACC. This is a fortunate away back-to-back. I'm higher on GT than you, but to have GT, BC, VT back-to-back as your 3 away games and your only 3 away game stretch of the season, I think sets up pretty damn nicely.
Yeah, this is another clear dub for us. And I think that this is when we start to get hot. This is when we start to mesh as a team. And this is when we start to light some teams up. Like, this is when we're going to start destroying people.
Yeah, I mean, they lost. Landers Nole was their only talented guy, and he goes to Memphis. I mean, I honestly don't know what they have that's redeeming. Obviously, that Wofford coach knows how to get great productivity over not talented players, but he's not going to beat a team like Florida State, a team like Duke, a team like North Carolina with the roster he's got this year. All right, what do you think about Wake at home?
Maybe
the third worst team.
Yeah, another trash team. This is another win. There's not much to talk about Wake.
I do love Forbes. That's a great hire. I think he's going to turn that program around, but he's going to need 3 or 4 years.
Time.
He's recruiting really well. I would not be shocked if in 3 years this is a top 6 team in the ACC, but he needs time. But I do think that was a great hire. We will beat them though in Tallahassee. I said earlier that Duke is probably the biggest game of the year because it's Duke, but in my opinion, this is truly the biggest game of the year, bar none, is UVA in Tallahassee. I think, differ on how good each of us thinks UVA is. I think they're the best team in the country. You don't have them quite that high. But needless to say, they're a top 3 contender for the ACC this year. What do you think happens in Tallahassee?
Going through this schedule, I kept eyeing this game because I always look at UVA as like a top program in the country, and that's how upper echelon programs should run. And everything they do is perfect. Like, they are perfect normally from start to finish. They control the game, they control the flow, and they make you play games that you don't want to play. I have this as our last loss of the year going into any kind of tournament play. This is a great test, and this might be the number 1 team in the country when we get to play them. Kike Clark, you've said time and time again, little point guards give us trouble. I think he might give us some trouble here. I guess we have to see what we get from Evans. What are we going to get defensively from Evans? Because at the end of the year, Evans was a talented defender and facilitator on offense and scorer when we needed him to be. If we get end of the year Evans, I don't think this is much of a contest because I don't think they have the guys to run with us from small forward to center. I don't think they have. I think we can run them out of the gym there. But if Evans can't defend here, I don't know if we have a guy that we can really put on Clark.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Kihei Clark is the antithesis of Chris Likes. He's a tiny guy who plays exactly like a tiny guy should. Early in his career, he maybe was driving to the hoop and throwing up some up and unders a little bit more than he should have. But overall, this guy facilitates. He plays hard. He understands how to take the air out of the ball, which is what you need to do at UVA. I also think that losing Mamade Diakite is a huge loss. That guy was better than most people gave him credit for. I think each of the last 3 years, he was probably the most important player on the court, including when they had DeAndre Hunter. I think he was really a leader and an important guy for that team. However, for me, UVA is the best team in the country because Jay Huff came on so strong at the end of the year. You bring in another guy in Hauser that is a do-it-all type guy who is projected to win ACC Player of the Year by a lot of people. I think this is Tony Bennett's ideal roster. And the fact that they don't have the depth that Florida State doesn't matter to Virginia because they play 6-7 guys. And that's why I think UVA is the worst matchup in the country for Florida State because they basically take our depth and make it a
obsolete.
The depth doesn't matter anymore because they're running these long possessions and finding a way to score with 3, 4, 5 seconds left on the shot clock every time down the court. That being said, they don't perform well in Tallahassee. They haven't beaten us there in a long time, including with some of their best teams. They have won a couple, but overall, Tallahassee is not a place where I see them being able to beat us this year. At UVA, I give UVA an easy W, to be honest. In an ACC tournament, I won't say an easy W, but I think they are a team that wins the ACC tournament next year if an ACC tournament happens. To me, we win in Tallahassee, but pretty much the opposite of everything else I've been saying in this entire podcast. I think that UVA is a better team than what this result indicates, and they end up being a better team than Florida State in the end.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that final statement.
Okay. We agree on one thing there.
Yeah, one part of that. The rest, no.
Virginia Tech at home, not even worth discussing.
Nope,
I imagine.
Another win.
That's a W. What do you think at Miami?
Another win.
Okay, I'm giving us a loss here. I think that there's something to be said for let me look at it. If we were to reel this off, we'd look at 10 straight wins. I just don't see it happening. Finishing the season on 10 straight wins. I know I say that when we were well on our way to looking to be doing that last year. If we had won in the ACC tournament. But I think Miami does have talent. I think by that time, maybe Larinaga has become smart enough to minimize Christ-likes in that offense. He takes advantage of some of his young talent, one of those recruits he's brought in. And I just think this is a game Florida State drops that they shouldn't. I think it's a close one. But remember, we pulled off a miracle to win there last year.
Yeah.
It was an overtime game. Another one of those where MJ Walker just willed the team into overtime, and then we won it from there. I just think this is one of those dangerous games that I could see us losing. So I'll give us a random L there. At UNC, toughest game left on the schedule.
I mean, if there was a game to give us the random L, I figured it would be at North Carolina and not Miami. But I actually have us winning at North Carolina. Another game where Ham and the staff make adjustments from the first game. Unless we see in the first game that we get blown out of the water, at least at how I view the schedule, which I don't think will happen, I think that we can come back and beat this UNC team. I don't think they're as good as we are top to bottom.
Yeah, I think this is an anger game after dropping, either you drop UVA or you drop Miami or one of these games over that stretch, and they want to prove that they are a contender. And I think this is when Florida State really gets it into shape. I think they win at UNC as a statement game. I could see UNC even maybe being the third team in the ACC at this point, if not the second. I can see them being ahead of Florida State in the ACC standings. But I think that's a statement. I think it's a big win. And I think it sets the tone for what's to come.
And that's Boston College.
Yeah, a big game.
Big game, BC at home.
Yeah.
Big win.
You got the Eagles and their 36 white guys coming in. So a loss, you're saying?
Yeah, it's a big fat W.
Yeah, W's for both of us there. Notre Dame. This is not the Notre Dame we faced last year. It's shocking to me that Notre Dame, when I look back at their roster, thinking about, having this podcast and discussing the schedule, how much they had on that roster, and in my opinion, underachieved with. I think they ended up finishing 8th in the ACC with John Mooney, with Rex Pfluger, who had been there for 78 years. That team, that was a top 4 team they had a better roster than Louisville, I think, looking back at it, and they achieved nothing with it. I think the only guy they've got coming back that's a difference maker is Prentice Hub. I believe he is back this year. I think he's a great player. He gave us fits last year. But other than that, this is not a roster. Mike Bray has made getting guys old and keeping them old famous, and he can't even do that this year. I would be overly shocked to see us lose to Notre Dame, even at that arena.
The only way this turns into a loss is if we see something like Indiana, where they kind of just shoot the lights out, and we have no answer for that. But this is a team with not a lot of ACC experience, not a lot of talent. Mike Bray lost everything that he had. He's going to have to really cultivate some talent from within for multiple years to make this a good team again.
I think we agree. Neither of us see that one happening.
No.
We'll give the Noles a W on both accounts. All right, so I think we may even be even on the record here, but let's check on that. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 L's, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 L's as well. Yeah, I believe.
I think that's realistic. I think it's timing of the L's, because the games that I would pick for a loss, you pick for a win, and it was either the game before or the game after that we picked the opposite. So I think 5 losses is a realistic expectation, and I think if there's a few things that could kind of change this whole season. How good is Sadar Calhoun? How good is Tanner Nagam? And how much weight has Raekwon Gray lost?
Yeah, I mean, that's well, we know he'll have, even if they say he's lost 30 pounds before the season starts, we'll turn on the television and he'll be
right back there. He'll be right back there.
But he's still incredibly athletic. He's a guy who, if he could shoot from 3, even like around 36%, 37%, this dude's going to start getting NBA looks, because they'll know how to put him into shape that he needs to be for the NBA. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of guys on this team. You've got guys who are NBA talents. Balsa could be an NBA talent. He could be a guy who could get drafted next year if he played well enough. Sadar Calhoun, like you said, he is easily an NBA talent if he plays up to his ability. We all know Scotty's gone. MJ is maybe not an NBA guy, but he is clearly a guy who could be successful in the ACC. If you hit on Tanner Nam and you hit on even 2 or 3 of these other guys, if you hit on a Raekwon Evans, a Raekwon Gray, a Sadar Calhoun, a Balsa, give me 2 of them to go with what we have. Mm-hmm. You're looking at some scary stuff, and that's without even mentioning you've got a guy like Polite. Every year we see these guys that we don't expect to be good end up being incredibly good. Phil Cover was a guy I could not stand for 3 years, became one of the best players to have on your team that we've ever had. And so if that happens with any of these guys this year, I think 20-5 is a gross underestimate. And that's just to speak to how great a job Hamilton and CY and Stan have done with this program, that we're talking about 20-5 is us being real conservative. And I think that is absolutely the case.
Absolutely. And there's guys we didn't even mention in there. Nate Jack. Every pundit is talking about Nate Jack. Where is Nate Jack? Could he be the shooter this year that they need? Wyatt Wilkes is another one who Ham himself has said he could be the best shooter in program history. Right. So where's the scoring going to come from? It could be that Swiss Army knife kind of player that does it all. Maybe that's MJ Walker this year. Other years, Terrence Mann was that guy that kind of did everything. I don't know who it's going to be. But I know the points are going to come. We do those hockey lineups for a reason, and the only team that kind of prevents us from doing that is UVA.
Yeah. Well, we've gone over the schedule I'm sure we'll have plenty more time to talk about how the season's progressing once it actually starts. Before we do start, we'll probably try to do a bit of a positional review of the team, just talk the roster a little bit more. Obviously, you can hear that we're excited about talking about Tanner, and we will probably spend 20 minutes speaking about just him. That being said, real quick before we sign off, want to discuss recruiting. I think that it's hard to really fully appreciate how great a job Ham has done with this class. And in losing Bryce McGowan's, I think it lost a little bit of the luster that people thought it had. And I don't think that that's fair. I'll start on this rant with Bryce McGowan's. Thank God he chose Nebraska, because if he chose Tom Crean in Georgia, I think both of us would have driven to Athens, took a poop in a paper bag and put it on his doorstep and lit it on fire, because I just can't deal with a garbage program and a coach that is showing no whatsoever track of success with all the talent he's getting, is getting these guys away from Florida State. But to that end, the guy goes and he plays with his brother in Nebraska for a former NBA coach in Fred Hoiberg, all understandable things. To me, it's all a smokescreen. It's all garbage. Bryce McGowan's wanted to be the guy. He wanted to be number one on the team. He wanted to handle the ball. He wanted to bring it up court. And I think Ham made a very conscious decision when he said, we're bringing in Jalen Warley. This is a kid that we cannot not have on this roster. He is the perfect Florida State point guard. And he said, if it means losing Bryce McGowan's, arguably one of the best shooters we ever could have signed in any class, I'm willing to do it because this kid's such a perfect fit. And he knew what was going to happen, and it happened because Bryce wasn't sticking around to be the eighth guy off the bench. And that's truly what he would have been. So I am not personally upset, similar to how we never would have seen Devin Vassell become a top 10 NBA pick if Anthony Edwards had come to Florida State. I think Florida State's better in the long runs without McGowan. And I want to hear your opinion on that, and also just talk about how incredible is it that we've signed 2 5-stars, 1 highly regarded 4-star, and arguably the best junior college recruit, all on the first day of National Signing Day. And they're all coming. None of them are leaving now. They're all coming to school. I want to hear your thoughts on both of those. I'll shut my mouth.
I'll shut up and listen. I'll hang up and listen. Thank you for that. But I think this is awesome, like what we've done. And I think what we were posting on social media after signing these guys was indicative to how confident they are in this class without Bryce, because they were really hyping these guys up. There was no harm, no foul when Bryce left. And you didn't see any ill will from any of the signees after Bryce left as well. And I think that kind of speaks to the volume of how united this class is. They all know how talented they are, okay? Like you said, 2 elite 5-stars, 2 of the better players that hopefully will walk through these doors. And then a center that has been committed to Florida State more than once already is going to be 21 years old when he comes to college with 4 years to play. Okay, so will he stay those 4 years? No, but will he come in way more developed than an 18-year-old? Absolutely. I'll take that every day. And then you have a wild card in Butler, and who knows what he can be. His film shows he can shoot. His film shows he can run. His film shows some crazy defense. Now, everybody looks like they're 5'6". Who cares? Okay, you can't teach 7'1". Okay, so put on some size and learn how to be. You want to play a stretch 4? Go be your stretch 4. I'm perfectly fine with that. This is an elite class, and this is a class that's setting up for something funny at the end, right? We had that McGowan spot. We held the McGowan spot. We didn't take another guy early in this signing period. That means a transfer's coming. I mean, look, where did Tanner come from this last year, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were all focused on Musa, like you said, and the 3-finger wonder, but we didn't get either of them because we stole this guy.
Yeah, he was hanging out at Tim Hortons when Ham called him up. Like, it's incredible.
It's amazing. And I don't, yes, we lose Bryce. kudos to Bryce. You want to go play with your brother, you want to play for an NBA coach, that's fine. It's not like we're not producing NBA talent now. I don't know if you've watched TV at all, where we have 2 guys projected to go in the lottery, one potentially in the top 5. Okay. So I don't know what you're watching because our guys are starting to succeed on the next level too. You have guys like Mann that were drafted in the second that are getting meaningful minutes and playing. You have a guy like Beasley that's on getting to his second contract, was a first round pick, although he may not get that second contract now. A little bit of trouble.
He's got a few guns in his pocket that he probably shouldn't.
Aside from that, we have Isaac as well. We're producing NBA talent. You should see that. You should say like, okay, this is an NBA coach. I'll go play for him. I don't know if you watch the Bulls, weren't very good. Pretty bad at the whole basketball.
Yeah. But here's the thing, and that's my whole point with this. The guys who signed, the Matthew Clevelands, Jalen Warleys, John Butlers of the world, are signing here because they believe in the system. None of those guys has the impression that they're going to play 30 minutes a game their freshman year. It's just not going to happen. Absolutely zero chance with any of those guys. And McGowan wanted to be a guy who got those types of minutes. And beyond that, he wanted to be the guy in his class.
Ham doesn't do that.
Signed Worley. It was a very clear, and I don't mean to say it this way, but it was a middle finger to McGowan's idea that he was going to be the point guard for this team. And more power to him. I think if you want to go lose, 15, 17 games a season out in frigid Omaha with your brother, be my guest. Hopefully they play well. I've got nothing against them. This is not an Anthony Edwards, Tom Crean situation where I hope they lose every single game.
Could have been. It could have been. It almost was.
But the point is, I'd love to see Nebraska win with the McGowan's brothers. That's great.
Sure.
For me, this team is going to be fine. To your point, you leave a spot open for a reason. I think Ham could have seen this coming. Remember, we have 2 spots. So I think he could have seen this coming. And if he was really interested in a James White type player, some of these guys, I forget the kid's name who went to Maryland. We could have gotten these guys. I really believe we could have. And I think Ham wants these spots open. He wants to see who's going to be around. And let's not forget, I think the chances are very, very low, less than 1%, that Michael Foster doesn't go pro. But if he doesn't go pro, Florida State and Georgia are the only 2 options. And I don't know what type of kid he is. If he wants to be the end-all, be-all number 1 guy, he'll go to Georgia if he's going to college. But most likely, if he's coming to college, it's because he wants to develop and win games. And so I give Florida State the edge. That being said, guy like that's probably going pro. Let's not even worry about it. I trust him. He's going to figure it out. This is all to say, signing all 4 of those guys the first day is such an incredible feat. And with bringing back Raekwon Gray, bringing back Polite, you're bringing back Osborne, you're likely bringing back Saldar Calhoun, you're likely bringing back Balsa. And if you aren't bringing back either of those 2 guys, we won a national championship this year anyways, so it doesn't matter. This is going to be our best roster we've ever had by a considerable margin. And the rest of the season, we're going to talk about this season, but just to say, we should be very excited for what this program is. It
is really hard to not look ahead this year because we've never seen anything like this. 4 guys.
We've never seen anything like Scotty.
No, we haven't. We haven't, and we do have him this year. It's funny seeing guys like P-Dub leave when he could have came back and still been a lottery pick next year, but you go get that money. You go get that money now. I'll always wonder what could have been watching him and Scotty play on the same court. And maybe one day they will in the future. That's not to say that they won't. It would have been cool to see it in Garden and Gold, but I'm so excited for Scotty Barnes. Yeah. I haven't seen a guy play with his aggressiveness and intensity, walk through these doors with his size and skill set. I don't think ever.
Yeah. I do not think we have. I think the only comparable was Jonathan Isaac, but he's not the same skill set, arguably just as talented in a different way, but not this skill set, not a guy who can impact the game for every single second he's on the court like Scotty Barnes can. To me, and like I said, we'll get into these positional reviews later, but I kind of want to finish my statement by saying, I think the floor of the performance that you see from Scotty Barnes is something along the lines of what we saw from Patrick Williams last year. And Patrick Williams might be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. So I think we're looking pretty damn good for what we could see from this team this season. And then looking forward, it's going to be a hell of a ride.
It's exciting. It's exciting. And I'll kind of leave us with a thought or a hot take per se. I think Scotty's going to come in and be better than what Trent was last year. And I know Trent was that floor general. He was the guy that we needed, but he was also hobbled a little bit by injuries the entire year. We saw that. What did he have? Turf toe for a little bit, and it kind of lingered with him. And barring injury, I do think Scotty will be more impactful than Forrest was last year. Maybe I'm going out on a limb there. I mean, Forrest led us to a lot. He's the most winningest player in FSU basketball history. So I'm not going to discredit what he did. But I think that if we're going to talk about leadership, we have other leaders on this team. And Trent was that leader last year. And I think that we can kind of rely on guys that have the experience now. Polite has the experience. Osborne has the experience. Walker has the experience. Gray and Evans have the experience. That I think we're just going to let Scotty run, like go crazy, have some fun. And I think if that's the case, he's going to be. I'm projecting him as a top 3 pick.
All right. Well, I'll end it by saying I sure as hell hope you're right. We appreciate everybody joining us for this first edition of the Nole's Hoops Authority podcast. I can't even say that right, but we had a good time. We'll try to keep it briefer in the future, but we just love talking about FSU basketball so much that it's sometimes hard to stop. We'll be back with some positional reviews before the season starts, and go Noles.
Go Noles.